Imagine walking into someone's apartment. Hello Kitty curtains. Hello Kitty towels. Hello Kitty silverware. Stuffed dolls everywhere you look. At first glance, it looks like the bedroom of a child obsessed with a cartoon cat. But then, you notice one doll that's different from the rest. An oversized Hello Kitty mermaid doll, sitting in the corner, with something sewn inside it. Something that doesn't belong. Something that would make a 21-year veteran detective say he had never, in his entire career, seen anything this cruel. This is the story of Fan Man-Yi, a woman who survived an orphanage, the streets, addiction, and poverty, only to meet an end so horrific, so deliberately monstrous, that Hong Kong would never forget her name. And this is the story of how a 14-year-old girl, haunted by a ghost, walked into a police station and blew the whole thing open. But then she said something that stopped them cold. May 1999. Hong Kong. A 14-year-old girl, we'll call her Ah Fong, the name used to protect her identity, walked into a police station alone. She looked terrified. She told the officers she was being haunted. She described the ghost in chilling detail. A woman bound with electrical wire, blood covering her body, staring at Ah Fong wherever she went. Every night, every dream, refusing to disappear. The police, understandably, were skeptical. Ah Fong had a history. She'd been running with a dangerous crowd, and drug use wasn't out of question. I was there, she said. I was part of it, and I know where the body is. The officers followed Ah Fong to a building in the Kowloon district, and what they found inside that apartment changed all of them forever. Before we talk about what happened inside that apartment, I want you to know who Fan Man-Yi was, because in cases like this, victims can get reduced to just what was done to them, and Fan deserved better than that. Fan's life was hard from the very beginning. Abandoned by her parents as an infant, she was raised in a girls' orphanage. Not exactly the warm, loving environment any child deserves. When she turned 16, the orphanage decided she was old enough to handle life on her own. They released her onto the streets of Hong Kong, with no family, no money, and no real support system. She did what she had to do to survive. Petty crime, selling herself, and somewhere along the way, she developed an addiction to narcotics, which, when you understand her circumstances, isn't hard to understand. But Fan wasn't just a statistic. In 1996, she met a man at the nightclub where she worked as a dancer. They got married, they had a son, and for a little while, Fan had something she'd never really had before. A family, a reason to fight. She got a job as a hostess. She started working on her addiction. Neighbors said she seemed like she was finally getting her life together. Unfortunately, that window wouldn't stay open for long. In 1997, Fan crossed paths with a man named Chan Man-Lok. He was 34 years old, a pimp, a narcotics dealer, the head of a small organized crime ring in Hong Kong. He became one of her regular customers and her supplier. And because Fan's addiction kept pulling her under financially, one day she made a decision that would cost her everything. After a session with Man-Lok, she stole $4,000 Hong Kong dollars from his wallet. He found out almost immediately, and his response was calculated and merciless. He demanded she repay the $4,000, plus an additional $10,000 in interest. Fan managed to scrape together the original amount and begged for more time to get the rest. Man-Lok said no. Instead, in March 1999, he sent two of his associates, Leung Xingbut and Leung Weilan, to kidnap Fan and bring her to him. What followed would last for weeks. They brought Fan to a third-floor apartment on Granville Road. They tied her with electrical wire. They used dirty rags to muffle her screams. And then the torture began. Every single day, for nearly a month, Chan Man-Lok and his associates subjected Fan to escalating abuse, burning her flesh, beating her, using her as what they eventually called and I'm quoting here, a human punching bag. They tied her wrist to the ceiling fan with electrical cords and left her suspended, sometimes overnight. When they weren't in that room, they were in the next one, playing video games, eating, living their lives, as if there was a dying woman on the other side of the wall. Ah Fong, just 13 years old, and in a relationship with Man-Lok, who was more than 20 years her senior, visited the apartment during this time. She later told police that she had participated in the abuse, that she thought it was fun. The psychological damage behind that statement is its own tragedy. By the end of April, Phan could barely move. Her body had been pushed far beyond what any human being should have to endure. On April 15, 1999, the group left for dinner, leaving Phan locked in the bathroom. When they returned, she was already gone. Phan Man Yi was dead. I want to be careful here, because what I'm about to describe is deeply disturbing. But it's important to the case, and it's part of why this story became one of the most shocking in Hong Kong's history. To cover their crime, the men dismembered Phan's body in the bathtub using a saw. They boiled the remains. They disposed of most of the pieces with household garbage. But they kept her skull, and they stuffed it inside an oversized Hello Kitty mermaid doll, and sewed it shut. That doll sat in that Hello Kitty decorated apartment until the night Ah Fong walked into the police station and told them where to look. The three men, Chan Manlock, Leung Xing Butt, and Leung Wailun, were arrested and brought to trial. Ah Fong testified against them, providing investigators with a full picture of what had happened inside that apartment. The men denied murder. They admitted to preventing Phan from receiving a proper burial, but each one pointed fingers at the others for the actual torture, minimizing their own roles. Their defense attempted to argue that Phan may have died from a methamphetamine overdose, not from the weeks of torture. And because of the state of Phan's remains, medical examiners could not definitively confirm the cause of death. Phan's husband testified that she had stopped using meth when she became pregnant with their son. The jury was unable to convict on first-degree murder. Instead, all three men were found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. The judge, delivering the sentence, said, "Never in Hong Kong in recent years has a court heard of such cruelty, depravity, callousness, brutality, violence, and viciousness perpetrated by a human being on another human being." A court-appointed psychiatrist found that all three men had psychosocial behavior disorders, meaning they showed no remorse. None. Ah Fong was released without charges, in recognition of the evidence she brought to the case. Evidence police might never have had without her. Those sentences were handed down in 2000, which means, depending on parole decisions, those men could be free. After the trial, strange things began happening at the Granville Road apartment building. A woman who had no knowledge of the murder rented a flat on the 4th floor. She and her friend began experiencing things they couldn't explain, a ghostly touch while sleeping, the sound of a woman crying in an adjacent vacant apartment. Late at night, other residents reported seeing the figure of a woman on the staircase. The staff at a hair salon on the ground floor reported arriving each morning to find Hello Kitty dolls placed around the shop, dolls that hadn't been there when they locked up the night before. When they checked the CCTV footage, they saw something that made them leave and never come back. A shadow following the salon owner as he walked out and locked the door. Eventually, no one wanted to live or work in that building. It stood empty for years. In 2012, it was demolished. Phan Man Yi was abandoned before she could even speak. She spent her entire life trying to claw her way towards something better, toward stability, toward family, toward a version of herself she could be proud of. She almost made it. What was done to her was not just a crime. It was a systematic erasure of a human being, one who had already been let down by every system that should have protected her. The Hello Kitty murder case is remembered for its shock factor, but I think it deserves to be remembered for Phan. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. These stories are difficult, but they matter because the people in them were real. I'll see you in the next one.